Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Okay, so very
Sanjit,
good.
am I audible? Dr. Sanjit, am I
Yes,
audible?
yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, great.
Okay, sir. Okay, so very good afternoon to all the participants for the last session of the day. For this session, we have with us Dr. Somnath Tripathi as the guest speaker. Before he start his talk, let me take the privilege to introduce him. Dr. Somnath Tripathi received his PhD in Computer Science and Engineering from IIT Guwahati in 2007. He is currently working as associate professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at IIT Patna. He joined the faculty in December 2008. His research interest includes lightweight cryptography, security issues in resource-constrained devices, blockchain, and machine learning security. He has published more than 90 research papers in different journals and conferences of repute. He has been PI of several projects related to security. Dr. Tripathi is currently serving as an associate editor of Sadhana Academy Proceedings in Engineering Science of the Indian Academy of Sciences and editor of IETE Technical Review. With this small introduction, I hand over the session to Somnath sir.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Sanjit. A wonderful introduction.
Thank you.
Hope
Sir.
I am audible, right?
Yes,
okay.
Sir, you are audible. Can you make full screen?
Yeah, just. Okay. Hope my slides are visible.
Yes, sir. Clearly visible.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
over
you.
To you, sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon to all the participants. I think I am audible to all participants. And before starting, I would say that if any confusion or anything, so you can interrupt me at any time, not to wait until the last. Well, so in this talk, basically, I will discuss about the authentication mechanisms and start with these IoT systems to introduce that how the traditional authentication mechanism is difficult to embed with the IoT systems, and the lightweight authentication system can be designed. Then I will discuss a few. I will start with some traditional authentication mechanisms, and then I will discuss with the lightweight authentication mechanisms, which will be suitable for IoT systems. And in the meanwhile, I will tell that how the system could have the security flaws, which will give insight to the researchers that before designing a protocol, how can you look it into carefully so that the security flaws could be avoided. Well, so anyway, this is my declarations, of course, that some materials have been copied from the internet sources in this talk for the sake of this educational purpose. I hope you can understand the things. Well, this is the roadmap of today. Rather waiting, I'll start it out. I think. Well, so IoT is a network of physical objects. The object could be devices, it could be vehicle, and it could be large building, etc. They have the communication capability. They collect and gather and share the information. They're accessible through internet, so it can be the data can be accessed any place, any time, any people, or anything connectivity paradigm. Internet working of wide heterogeneous network with varied protocol stack, resource powers. I say it is heterogeneous network because you can find the different capability of nodes, which is having the different computational communication capability. Just like you can see that servers and something with the like your mobile handheld devices, and something can be very tiny devices like your sensors too in the entire network. So let me take an example of this I will take a small example of the smart TV, which will be looking like this way. That is a smart refrigerator, which can be used for recognizing what's been put in it and recognize when items are removed, recognize when items are expired, and notify to the user, and shows receipts that most closely match with what is available in it. Access refrigerator from a handheld device like your mobile phone, so you can make it a switch on or switch off, and you can access the information there from the outside of your home element. There are huge applications in smart home, smart grid, smart vehicles, smart city, etc. So if you look at this connected IoT devices trend from 2019 to 2029, it is predicted that around 25.44 billions of devices is to be connected in the 2029 phase. So this says that how the day by day the popularity of the IoT devices are increasing. So let me take a small example of the home automation where there are several sensors are there. Those who are connecting through this something I call the access point aggregator, which aggregate this data and share it to the cloud. And the user can access from this cloud and to get this information and to control over that also. Now the question comes that when this aggregator becomes the AVIL, we call the AVIL twin aggregator, then what could happen? Then actually the data what you're getting that may be corrupted, and that the corrupted data could be stored in the cloud and which can confuse the user too. So through a single vulnerable device, even if by what an attacker can do is that the attacker can try to compromise a single some small portable device. Even if it could compromise a small device, then based on this or by help of this, it can hack the entire systems. Of course, the example of such attack is not new or not small. We'll see something in the next slide. So through a single vulnerability device, attacker can breach into your entire home network. This acts as a window to hack into your entire setup of networking home. So if you look at this system, it will be, I think it is, of course, though it is a somewhat older history in 2017, but I will show you that there are plenty of such examples you have seen in the near past too. In 2017, the Food and Drugs Administration Unit of USA announced that they had discovered a serious vulnerability in implantable pacemakers made by Judo Medicals. So the vulnerability could allow the attacker to access the device. Once in, they could deplete the battery or administer the incorrect pacing or shocks. So if you look at the recent news, there are you can see that many things that happened in the recently that number of IoT devices are happy to. The IoT attacks escalated in 2021, according to Kaspersky, some 1.51 billion of IoT breaches from January to June 2021. So you see the first half of 2021 saw 1.5 billion attacks on smart devices with attacker looking to steal data, mine cryptocurrency, or build botnets. If you look at this IoT environment, the architecture of IoT environment, there are different layers starting from the sensing layer where you can see the number of sensor devices, and the network layers where they are communicating to each other through the some networking devices, and the information get processed, we call it the information processing layer, and several applications, smart grid, smart transport, and industrial applications, we call this is the integrated application layer. So the reason of writing that is that based on the each layer, we can see that what the threats could be. So if you look at the sensor layer, the most popular attacks, including the node capturing, so the attacker can capture certain number of nodes, and with the help of which it can breach the security of the systems. And then the fake node, the attacker can install certain fake nodes which will be controlled by the attacker itself, and it can frame some denial of service or distributed denial of service of attacks. And these devices are actually the very small, and the battery could be drained, and so that the attacks like denial of service attacks, so that the sensor will not work. Similarly, these devices, because they are the low power devices and having run by the batteries, small batteries, so the protocols are actually executed certain instance of time, or the rest amount of time it goes into sleep. But what the attacker does is that it makes something so that the devices are are not in the way of sleeping. They are not able to sleep. That means they are not resting, so that the battery could be drained automatically. And similarly, the replay attacks and so on. In the network layer, of course, you have the eavesdropping, the attackers eavesdrop or sneak the information, man in the browser, denial of service attacks, routing after several routing attacks could be framed. And similar things, the black hole, gray hole, wormhole attacks, and so on. In the processing and application layer, the data accessibility and authentication, data privacy and identity, availability of big data. These are the common threats which are existing, or which are occurred in the processing or application layer. If you look at, let's take an example of a small example of a modern car. The modern car is consisting of more than 30 issues. These issues, of course, you can see that it could be a camera, it could be the display devices, it could be voice reading devices, or which can measure the pressure of your tires and so on things, right? So there are many issues are there in the modern cars. Many issues are there in the modern cars, which can be communicated through different networks. You can see that if it could be without controlled area network, then you see the dashboard is connecting to all. It could happen that each and every devices are connecting to the a CAN network. So each is connected to the CAN, and they can communicate with it. So this is a small example of this. Then we'll see that what attack could be. Then if you look at this, such a vehicle, how it could hack in the July 2015. Just let me see the things.
You guys have been able to remotely
Sanjit,
control a car, hack into a Chrysler. Can you just take
Yes,
me
sir,
through how
yes,
you
sir.
did it?
Okay.
Yeah, the Jeep that we used has a system called Uconnect that's used for the infotainment, maps. It even has in-car Wi-Fi. We were able to identify some vulnerabilities in that system, exploit those vulnerabilities, and actually get code running on the Uconnect system.
What were you able to do?
We were able to do almost everything we were the last time we did this. Steering, braking, lock and unlock the doors, turn on the high beams. Basically anything in the car that was controllable over the in-car network, we were able to do.
You talk about last time, before when you showed us how to hack a car, you had to do it from within the car with a laptop. So tell me what is different now?
Yeah, now we don't have to be in the car. We don't have to be connected. We don't even have to be in the same state. So we can reach any car in the United States and potentially North America.
And to clarify, a hacker could take control of multiple cars at a time, regardless of where they are?
It's not really at a time. You have to go one after another. So you would have to be kind of sequentially doing it.
You guys went to Chrysler and you presented this research. What was their response?
Chrysler was really cooperative. We explained the issues back in October, and we've been working with them ever since to get a patch out so they can have protection against this type of attack and get it fixed. And they understood what we were doing and why we were doing it, and they've actually been very cooperative. There's a patch available from Chrysler. You can get the new firmware, you can download it to a flash drive, and then put it in your car and it'll be fixed. Additionally, you can take your car to a service department and they'll apply the patch for you.
What do you want people to kind of take away from this?
The statement I reiterate is, we're the good guys. Bad guys don't tell you about what's wrong. They keep it themselves and use it for whatever they want to use it for. We're out there to let people know the risk exposure and help manufacturers get things fixed.
You guys have been able to remotely control.
Okay, thank you then. I think you could have seen that the conversation and how the car would head. So one part of the story, what I told you that keeping the number of ECUs in the car, which is controlling and automatizing the car. However, the other part of the story is that how the attacker could hack the entire car and made the system in the other way around. All right. So that the driver could not control it, even the car made accident. What are the things that happened? Just I will tell you again here, and how it happened. There is something called as Uconnect, the head unit of Jeep manufactured by Harman Kardon. It is used for connectivity, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cellular network, navigation, etc. And there is OMAP BM3730 system on chip, provides all of these functionalities. Right? And the internal Wi-Fi communication interface we call it UAP0. And the interface to communicate outside world is through the PPP and PPPO, or this S-Print 3G service. They found that open telnet port in this port number 6667. So how the attack is as follows: that the DBus message daemon of Uconnect system is bound to port number 6667, which is used for inter-process communication. And there is something called the OMAP device, which is connected to the V850 through SPI. This SPI interface. And V850 connected to the CAN bus, and CAN messages are replayed here. So what the hacker does is that it sends the message through this S-Print 3G network, which is covered to, it observed that this is the port 6667. So it starts with the messaging, and this message is replayed to through the CAN bus. And then what they could do, the hacker could do the following: that started the blasting cold air, a radio station switch without the knowledge of the user or the driver, and showing image and infotainment what he is not liking to. And finally, they could stop the engine choke. If you remember that that newsmaker was asking that whether it can be done for the several cars, they refused that no, it cannot be done for the several cars parallelly, but it can be done sequentially. And finally, how they get it from this? What they did is that because this was having this flaw, then you have to go to the maintenance and R that page so that that things can be avoided. This attack can be avoided. So it is clear that how it could happen. If it could happen that when the message is going, then the recipient could authenticate the message, then he could analyze that whether the message is from particular inside the device or it is from outside the device. So therefore, I would say that the communication must be protected both from external and internal communication, and authenticate the user who is communicating with the vehicle, and block the communication from unauthorized devices, which is most important. Therefore, I would say that the strong authentication makes sure that only legitimate entities get the access and can send the information. So let us see the authentication from a simple basic point of view. The authentication I can treat as a two-party game. So there are two parties that consider Alice and Bob, and Bob is asking that when Alice communicates, Bob asks that who are you? Then Alice said, okay, I am Alice, you just sent my message. Of course, the Bob does not know who is on the other side, so it causes where authentication and integrity. Who is in the other side, whether it is particularly Alice to whom he want to speak. And the next is the integrity of the system, who is writing and what is the message it's obtained, whether it is from sorry, it is from Alice or not. So authentication and integrity is most important. Then for this purpose, what Bob does is that Bob shared the message is challenge that C, and Alice responded it with a function f xc. Okay, and you can say that okay, the x may be the shared key which is shared between the Alice and Bob will verify that okay, the f of xc can be generated by Alice only. Therefore, you can trust that okay, this message is from Alice. Okay. Now the question comes up whether this system is secure. Secure. Is it secure? Question is that. Okay, if any interesting guys, so you can write in the chat box yes or no. How we can see it later on. So if it is no, then how it is no? Why it is no? So it is Alice could connect to a rogue server. It is possible because this is a, as you can see, that unilateral authentication rather than bilateral. Means if Bob is understanding that it is from Alice, but Alice does not know that whether the other side is Bob or not. So it can connect to a rogue server. Now let's see that in other way around, that Bob shared a challenge, Alice responded out, and again Bob shared that f of x c plus 1. So whether this system, now again, what Alice does is that Alice again verify that whether this f of x c plus 1 is correct or not, because he knows C, so she can compute c plus 1 and therefore f of x c plus 1 also. Then what you obtain f of the x c plus 1 and what you compute f of x c plus 1, whether these two are equal or not. If it matches, then Alice can guarantee that okay, the other side is Bob. So in this way, it is a two-way authentication, but this question that whether it is secure. Again, the answer is yours. Again, I could say that Alice could connect to a rogue server M. You can think it out why it could be. Then what could be done? The solution could be like this way. While Alice sends the response, f of xc, she sends a new challenge that is c prime and waits for f of xc prime. If this f of xc prime and its computed f of xc prime is equal, then she authenticates that this is Bob. This particular mechanism, of course, it has the proper mutual authentication, satisfies proper mutual authentication. Hope this system is secure now. So what I will do is that I will take you to a famous, or you can say the popular, it may be famous or infamous, of course, you can decide, a protocol, which is existing protocol, Needham-Shredded protocol. They appeared in 1979 in a seminal paper. The goal is the authentication in network of workstations. Of course, later on in 1995, Gavin Lowe discovered unintended property while formal analysis. Therefore, at the beginning, I told you that whenever you design a protocol, you have to take it into care that whether it satisfies the security property or what you desire or not, or whether your objective is fulfilled or not, you do the proper analysis. So I will assume certain things that every agent A or a participant A has a key pair, that is KA and KA inverse. I call this KA is the public key, and this KA inverse I will call it the secret key, which is used for a signature or decryption purpose. That means I would say that the participant A knows its secret key only, knows only its secret key. No other party than A knows the secret key. Therefore, only A can decrypt the message encrypted with KA. So in the last session, of course, while I entered into the system, the last speaker was talking about the RSLI systems, the public key cryptography systems. From there, you could observe the exactly similar things when you have that this ciphertext C is equal to message M to the power E mod N. I believe that he has taught you already, right? And what the other part of the recipient does is that to find the M, what does it do? C to the power D mod N. When E, I call it the public key. Here I have written the KA, and D I call the KA inverse. So the relation between E and D is that E dot D is equal to 1 mod phi of N, when phi is the Euler function. Right? The exactly similar things are irrespective of the RSA or ACC or whatever this key may be. I wrote it in the public key cryptographic notation. Well, hope there is no confusion on this. Well, so the protocol is working as follows. And immediately after the protocol, I will ask a question. Hope the audience will be ready for this, right? Now, what A does is that A will send its identity A and generate a random nonce. I call this nonce of A, encrypt it using the public key of B, that is KB, I call, right? And send it to B. Now, what the A's identity and the nonce is the first random number generated by A, right? Now, the reason behind this A's identity is that we can understand that the A has sent it, but there is no guarantee that A, because this public key KB is known to anybody, even C can generate such message too, right? But we'll let them see that how it could be. Okay. Then what happens? B will send the nonce A. See that, however, only B can decrypt this message. Okay. Once B decrypted this message, he assumes that it has come from A, and this nonce A only he can decrypt only. So he will send this nonce A and randomly generate another nonce. I call it the nonce B, and encrypt it using the public key of A, that is KA. Again, here the same things, that only A can decrypt these things to obtain the nonce A and nonce B. Okay. Now, so A can assure that only B can send this nonce A. The reason is as follows, that B knows the KB inverse only. B only knows this KB inverse, nobody else other than that. Therefore, once A obtains this nonce A, he assures that the second party is B. However, there is no guarantee that this is A, right? To make it out the next step, that what A does is that he obtains this nonce B and encrypt it using the using the public key of B and send it to B. Once B decrypts it out, he finds this nonce B, and this is the same nonce B what we are generating. Therefore, B assures that A is the next party, because other than A, nobody can find this nonce B. Okay, so therefore A is authenticated. Now with this, I would say that both A authenticated B as well as B authenticated A. So it satisfies the mutual authentication property. Well, now the protocol aims to provide both authentication and secrecy. After this, the exchange only A and B know, nonce A and nonce B. Okay. Now we see that no other party other than A and B knows both nonce A and nonce B. Now, once both the parties know nonce A and nonce B, they can generate an ephemeral key like this way. I can make it a hash of nonce A, nonce B, and sometimes stop or something else. So these only A and B can generate. They can establish a secure session key between A and B. Okay, so this protocol satisfies both mutual authentication and they could establish a session key or ephemeral key. Now this is very clear. Of course, this is in the textbook evidence, but let us discuss what the problem was identified in 1995 by Lowe. So these anomalies in this protocol is as follows. It's very interesting to see that they send the A encrypted with KB to B. It's fine. Now what does B does is that B will forward it to C, some malicious party. B is a malicious party and forward it to C. And what did it do that? B shared it ANA with AC so that C can decrypt it. And B is pretending that this message is from A. Okay. B, what B does is B decrypted it because he knows the corresponding KB involved. So he find the A and NA. Now, what does it do? He re-encrypted with the C's public key, that is KC, and send it with C. So now C is confused. C is not understanding from where the message comes. C is understanding that message is from A. Okay. So what does it do? Now C will send the NA and NC. So it will generate a random nonce NA and C and encrypt with the public key of KA and send it. Obviously, if this is the IP spoofed, then it came to B. What B does is that B will just forward it to A because B cannot decrypt it. B cannot decrypt it, it just send it out. So the question comes to what is going to help? He does not know. But now see the next step. What A does is that A is not knowing that who is, whether it is B or A or C or something else. He understands that it is from B because the session started from A and B. So what the A does is that A will decrypt it out and send the NC, okay, encrypted with B's public key and share it to KB and share it to B. Okay. Now once B obtained its C, what it disclosed, B, it is disclosed the NC, which is secret parameter, is disclosed to B. Now what B knows both NA and NC. Of course, if it is fixed some way, then what happens? That the secret ephemeral part of C is known to B, which is not supported to be. So evil agent B tricks honest A into revealing the C's private value NC. Now C is convinced that he is talking to A, but actually he is talking to B. Okay. Okay. So what I mean to say is that such attacks have nothing to do with the cryptography. Even the underlying cryptographic primitives are secure. Even if you use the RSA-based scheme or ECC-based scheme, which is assumed to be secure, still such attacks are existing. So exploits participants' reasoning to fool them. A is correct that B must have decrypted A and a KB, but this does not mean that NA and the KA message came from B. As we see that it is came from C and forwarded by B. Right? Hope till this point it's clear to all. If any questions, I am happy to discuss. No. Well, so when I model the things, when I propose a protocol, then I need to model it. So while you model the attack, then you see that the adversarial capability, what an adversary can do. So assume that the adversary is capable of intercepting the communication between prover and verifier. It can inject the data, alter the content, and delete the data according to your environmental setting. And it can simply replay the previous messages, decompose it into pieces, reassemble and resend it. Then you can assume that statistical analysis, partial information from network traffic, and it can get the it can perform certain timing attacks as well. After that, for proving the security of the systems, you need to see that the correctness, that means the legitimate prover, must be accepted. It must not be rejected. And soundness property satisfies, meaning that fake prover must be failed to prove. So no dishonest prover can be proved by. Okay. So what do you understand that the authentication implemented as an exchange of messages between two or more parties, usually over an unsecured channel. It uses the cryptographic primitives as countermeasures. It uses symmetric cryptography, or it can use the asymmetric cryptography. When you use the symmetric cryptography, it is always need to understand that how to share or distribute the keys. If there are n number of participants, order of n square number of keys need to be shared. How to distribute these keys, it is again a question. Similarly, if you use the asymmetric systems, though that problem is avoided, then another problem is that the resource exhaustion. Intensive computations, like if you look at the RSLI schemes, you have to use the strong modular exponentiation multiplication operations. So, but if you look at the challenges with IoT systems, there are constrained resources, constrained in computation, less memory, low bandwidth, limited battery power. Moreover, there is no user monitoring, no temper resistance, no pre-configured topology. Because there are constrained resources, so therefore there could be possible that the resource exhaustion attacks. As I told you that the denial of sleeping. No user monitoring, so there could be some device capturing attack. No temper resistance, so there could be device data compromise. No configure topology, no knowledge of. So looking at these constraints, yeah, any questions or somebody, if you unmuted, can you mute your mic to reduce the noise? Yes. So you see that because there are limited resources, the POF-based mechanisms could be more appropriate. POF in the sense physical unclonable functions. So what I will do is that I will just give a brief idea about the physical unclonable functions. Then I will discuss that how physical unclonable functions can be designed, and using the physical unclonable functions, how authentication mechanisms can be performed. That I will tell you. So that is hence what I told you, that POF-based authentication would be suitable for such like things. So POF in the sense physical unclonable functions. This is nothing but the fingerprint of a device. You have the huge information out of that. That I will capture a few, that is with a string of information, which will which I say that the fingerprint of that device. So as an example, n-bit challenge to the POF will respond with the n-bit. I'm sorry, response. So a challenge response mechanism in which the mapping between an input called challenge and the corresponding observed output called response is dependent on the complex and variable nature of a physical material. There are many different ways the POFs can be generated. We'll discuss a few. The challenge response mapping is unclonable, ideally, and instance specific, so depends on manufacturing process variations. So if you look at this POFs in IoT systems, so a user can share the challenge to different devices, and the different devices he will give the different response, even the same challenge. So looking at the response, the user can understand that which device it could be. That means it can authenticate a proper device. So for the same challenge, the response should be unique. It is independent and unpredictable. These are the three important characteristics must be achieved by the POF. So these are evaluatable. So given POF and the challenge C, it is easy to evaluate and find the response R is equal to POF of C. Just like your hash function, the one-way hash function, right? It is unique. Yeah, unique that the POF of X contains some information about the identity of the physical entity embedding of that we call unique, reproducible. Y is equal to pop of x is reproducible up to a small error. If I give the same pop, same x, then it will reproduce the same y with negligible error. Unclonable, given a pop p, it is hard to construct another pop say p prime such that p is not equal to p prime for all c belongs to the c which is there in this pop p. What we get it out? And the pop of c, this is the response of this pop p, and pop p prime to the same challenge, the response is say r prime. I should not get. That is unclonable. So I cannot generate another pop. It is computational or it is infeasible to generate a pop p prime such that this characteristics is followed. Similarly, unpredictable, given only a set of challenge response pair, that Ci, Ri is equal to pop of Ci, it is hard to predict Rz, which is a new response, which is pop of Cz, a new challenge. Then one-way property, that given only R, the response, it is computationally infeasible or it is hard to find the challenge C which satisfy this pop of C is equal to R. Then the temper evident, altering the physical entity embedding in pop, transferring pop to pop prime, such that with high probability for all Ci belongs to the Ci, pop of Ci is not equal to pop prime of Ci. So these are the properties are exhibited by an ideal pop. So there are different types of pop. Just I will give you the one example of the arbiter pop and the ring oscillator pop, and I will see that the what are the problems in the one pop, such pop, delay based pop, and how it can be. How you can refine it out, or how you can make the better pop. Okay. So this is the pop, the RO based pop and ring oscillator based pop. It consists of ring oscillators as the backbone. Okay, these are the ring oscillators you must be knowing from your back classes, right? So what happens that if I give here the 0, then there are all number of NOT gates are there. So at the next instance of time, I will get 1, and this is see that this is again feedback. So again, I will get 0 and 1 and so on. This means it is oscillating between 1 and 0. Therefore, we call it the ring oscillator because it is ring and oscillating. The output is oscillating. So I have the 2 ring oscillators here. Okay, with the same, you can say the odd number of inverters are here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. Of course, if you connect it, otherwise you can consider that n. You can say 2n plus 1 number of inverters are there. So what happens that there is a counter after a certain interval of time. I will see that whether this counter is greater than this or not. If this is greater than this, the output I will assume that it is 0 or vice versa. So the question comes to why it happens, because the process variation, even the same number of NOT gates will be there, okay, and the delay due to this NOT gate and this NOT gate will be different, and therefore the number of the counters, the counter value after a certain time, you will see that this counter and this counter value will be different, and therefore this value will come. Okay, right. And similarly, other way of generating pop is we call it the arbiter pop. You can see here that I've given the challenge with every arbiters, multiplexers here, and you see that there are n 2-port switching stages or multiplexers for an n bit challenges. So n bit challenges, so there are 2 to the power n possible paths are there. Okay, so you can see that I will take a arbiter is nothing, but I will consider this is a D flip flop. I will consider this is D and this is the clock, and there will be a rest, but that which is 1 or which is 0, and according to that this output. So is accumulated delay at the end of the path is compared by an arbiter circuit. The arbiter gives 1 bit decision whether it is 1 or 0. Okay, right. So there are several attacks or threats against this arbiter against this POP queue. So that every challenge response pairs, if I could understand, then I can know that, okay, this is the challenge, this could be the response. Similarly, replay attack, I must drop the challenge response pairs and play them back. Most important that there are recently set in attacks are there that is called the modeling attacks or machine learning based attacks. Take the advantage between relationship between the challenge and response and build a POP model using machine learning methods. Many machine learning methods are there. You can use the support vector machine, artificial neural network, or logistic regressions and create a model of that POP, and you can predict that if this is the new challenge, what could be the response with this particular POP. So it's the security notion would be looking like this way: for P with n-bit challenge and n-bit response is considered to be secure if it satisfies the following conditions. Number one is that no algorithm to predict the response are produced by an arbiter POP or an arbitrary challenge with probability of success greater than 2 to the power minus n. Because n bits are there, therefore 2 to the power n choice will be there. So it's with probability of success greater than 2 to the power minus 1 minus n, there should be no algorithm. Second would be that there will be no algorithm to predict the response R for an arbitrary challenge with using some sub-exponential time or space complexity. Or you can say that no algorithm to predict the response R for an arbitrary challenge with high probability of success with sub-exponential data complexity. Data in the sense, the challenge and response pairs. So these are there are different models, linear delay models. How this model coming just beyond the scope. I'm just leaving it out. So there are many modeling attacks results are looking like this way. So I will tell you that one simple POP, just a recent publication of our model attack resistance POP. We can see which could not be resistant particularly, but it makes difficult the modeling attack. It makes the modeling attack difficult. So the modeling attack is looking like this way. Attacker somehow collects a subset of challenge response pair that would be treated as a data set, and using this data set build a model. The model tries to predict the POP responses with high accuracy. So and for this modeling, some machine learning techniques can be used. Okay. As an example, an n-stage arbiter POP can be seen as a linear additive model. Just in my last slide, I did talk to you. So the time delay between every stage can be modeled using some efficient machine learning technique with a set of some challenge response pairs. So to resist against the modeling attack, what we did is that rather than a simple POP design, we created the a POP inside a POP. That means you can see that each is a. I took the n-bit challenge. The entire is n-bit challenge, and this n-bit challenge is split into some m-bit challenges. Okay, that is m-bit POPs you can see. So the C1 will be the m-bits and C2 m-bits and so on. So there are therefore k number of m-bits challenges. So then what I will do is that I will calculate this parity bits. So each here the 0th bit and here 0th bit of all. I will calculate the parity bit and store it here. And similarly 1th bit and so on, here 1th bit and so on. So this parity will be my m-bit. And this I will send it to an m-bit POP. And I will gain one response, that is R prime. See? And this R prime will XOR with these challenges. So this is my C1 prime. And similar things I will do with the C2, so C2 prime and so on, so on. Now what I will do is that I will feed it into the n-bit POP. What is my requirement? And the output is the n-bit response. So here what I did is that. So just let me tell the internal story. What you are gaining and what you are losing is that. Here you see that I am in addition to the circuit, I require a single m-bit POP. Okay, so single n-bit pop I need here, and rest n-bit pop anyway you are needing. So this using this extra n-bit pop, we could find that. Okay, this already I told you. The challenge are divided in this already told you. So you will get the output and be given again this. The response R is satisfying or is resisting the machine learning attack in a better way than the ordinary RO puffs. So these are the properties what you could achieve. So for the performance parameters of the POPs, we can discuss like this way that uniqueness in the sense it is an essential feature. To evaluate the uniqueness, Hamming distance between a pair of POP identifier used. If RP and RQ are n-bit responses of two chips P and Q for same challenge C, the average inter-chip Hamming distance among R chips is defined as this. Similarly, the uniformity, we calculate the uniformity, reliability, bit aliasing, steadiness, and so, and this is to be this, calculated to this. So we find it that these properties, of course, I'm leaving it out because so that I can cover it much better way. So in this POP, the designed POP, the uniformity is closer to 50%, which is supposed to in the ideal value. Uniqueness also we could achieve it close to the 50%. Reliability is close to the 100%, and so on. Bit aliasing, speediness, and PMSID value is closer to 0. Beside that, we find it out. We took it the arbiter POP and RO POP and modeled it using 3 different machine learning techniques like LRT, linear regression, support vector machine, and naive Bayesians, and find it out that this is better resistant than the others. So that means in here, what I was saying that the attack success rate is 59.5%. However, the other props like arbiter and RO prop, the attacker success rate is 86.9 and 89.2 respectively. And it is a recent literature by Wong et al. They also proposed some POP machine learning attack resistant POP, but that is resistant again 66.9% success rate of the attackers. Similarly, we have checked with the support vector machine and the naive Bayes, and we find that this mechanism or the proposed mechanism is better resistant than the attack. That means the attack success rate is lesser than the other existing. The reason is as follows, as just I told you, because of these things. So here we are randomizing it or offsetting the challenge values. So rather than the challenge to response, though the process variation is having an impact, but because of the machine learning technique, it could be able to predict the response. So to make it obfuscating, what we did is that we took the challenge, divided into, and then we calculate this response and XORed it. So the question comes that rather than doing this, can you do here this n-bit POPs again? But by doing so, your circuit complexity will be much higher. So to come into a, what you can say, the intermediate way, we find the solutions and we obtain a better result, what you can say. So for more detail, you can look at our published papers. Well, so, and this, we completed the hardware cost analysis also, just as I told you that this Markov is requiring 646 gate counts. However, the other things like CRC POP and InterPOP are requiring the much more. If you look at this, the total it is 1032, and the others are requiring 1156 and 1297, and Wong et al. Schemes of course 1064. But though they require the less, even the closer total gate counts, but the scheme is not resistant much against these attacks. Okay, so before going to the next, the application of the POP, let me wait for 10 seconds. If you have any doubts or any confusions, I can clarify here itself.
Okay, dear participants, any one of you have any questions till now, whatever covered, please ask. Anything you want to clarify?
Yeah, hopefully. Anything in chat? I could not see, of
No,
course.
no, sir. In chat there is no message.
Nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if there is no questions, then I will see. I will tell that how the POP is applied, and I will slowly move it into the application of this POP to authentication. Right. So POP response is a random seed used in public key cryptography for private and public key generation algorithms. So no secret needs to be handled by a manufacturer. A device generates the key pair on chip and outputs a public key. Therefore, it is very secure. So just as I showed you that POP will generate a seed value which can be used for the public key cryptography. Key generation, public key, and the private key. So this is the random reconfigurable POP. I'm just switching it out. Well, so we'll see that how the POP can be used for lightweight authentication. Let's consider a device A. I have a POP, so it will give the challenge for a particular challenge. Let's say this is the response. So what the manufacturer does is that he shares this device to the party, but in between, what happens that there is a chance that the device could be changed, right? Because the device manufacturing it comes in various stages. Then what could happen when it comes to the user? Some other things are inbuilt there, so you cannot have a check. Therefore, the POP could be a better solution which can tell you that whether the same device what you want is exactly there or not. So this is the things you given the challenge and this is the response. So the untrusted supply chain and it is the verifier will obtain this device A and POP, and this challenge and response will be sent to this verifier. So then the verifier will give the same challenge and obtain the response, and he sees that whether the trusted supply he has already supplied this, where this challenge what the response he obtained, this response and this response are identical or not. If they're identical, then this same device, otherwise it is not authenticated or the device is not safe. I'll tell you a small a scheme which is proposed in 2018. The scheme is as follows. The verifier stores all the challenge and response pairs in the database by taking and performing each entity. So during the enrollment phase, each device will register to the verifier, and verifier will have like this way the challenge and response CI and RI for each device. Then the verifier stored it out, and during the verification phase, the device will share this ID. So verifier will check that okay, for this device ID, what is the if ID is equal to ID primary obtained from this database, then he share the corresponding challenge to the device, and the device see that here's the problem. Now the device off and he obtained this challenge, and the output is response R. Now, if it sends the same R, what will happen? The verifier, of course, he can find out okay whether this R is matching or not. It's okay, it could authenticate. But what happens in the next time? Everybody knows this R, the attacker is in there in the middle. So next onwards, he can authenticate without this device 7. So to mitigate this thing, what does it do? It computes the D is that the RC5, the asymmetric encryption, uses this mark, that the mark ID of this, and R T is the timestamp. So the timestamp is changing at every time, and this R what he has obtained from this response, he extracted it and encrypted it and sent this D. Now what the verifier does is that the verifier is having a database, and for this ID, this is the challenge, this is the response. So now with this ID, he knows that this is challenge he has sent, and this is the response. So he also can calculate this. Let's say this is R prime, and he calculate this. And if this value for computer E is equal to D what he obtained, if that is the same, then it authenticates that device. Okay. Again, the reason is very clear here that no other device can generate this response with corresponding to this challenge, or no other device can find out what the output is. Unless you know this R, you cannot find the correct D. Therefore, verifier assures device D is to be authentic if this D is equal to E. Okay, right. Now, so whatever this works fine, but the question is that I have to have certain number of challenge and response. Of course, by more, and the question is that the time lagging. Okay, again, it is a matter that this time, what you have this timestamp and this timestamp must be there also. So these are the small problems are existing. Okay, and the basic things are between the C and R. So for each devices, I need to store some number of challenges and responses. Otherwise, what happens if anybody can give this challenge C and have this like D. Okay, and if the timestamp is not changing a little bit time enough, and that will make it enough that attacker can be authenticated with the verifier too. Another interesting thing by Urbi et al, they have published, this is having a different goal. That there are two IoT nodes are there, which can be authenticated through a particular server. So for this and using the POP-based mechanisms. Now we see that the node 1 is having the, let's say, they enroll it at that, they have the two challenges C1, C2, and the corresponding responses R1, R2 is enrolled in the server. Similarly, for the node 2, there are two challenges C3 and C4, and the corresponding responses R3, R4 is enrolled. Well, now if node 1 wants to communicate with the node 2, that is so to be authenticate, then it sends this that I am node 1 and I wish to talk to node 2 to the server. Then server computes the hash of the corresponding response R1 and R2, which is stored here along with the timestamp TS, and delta 2 is equal to H1 of R3, R4 TS. R3 and R4 are the corresponding responses of the node 2. And computes the TS1 prime is equal to TS XOR with R1 concatenated with R2, and TS2 prime is TS XOR with R3 concatenated with R4. Then what does it do? It sends the C1, C2, TS1 prime to node 1 and send C3, C4, TS2 prime to node 2. Of course, this ID is sending so as to tell that node 2 that node 1 wants to talk to you. Okay. Then each node, that node 1 and node 2, computes as follows. That this it computes from the TS1 prime. Now from this he is having the POP, so he gives the C1 and C2. So only this node 1 can generate R1 and R2. No other node can generate. So he find the R1 concatenate with R2, and as XOR with TS1 prime, what he obtained. So he will get TS1 prime XOR with R1, R2. So he will get TS, what is here now. Well, then what he will do, he will compute this ID1, say, is equal to H1 of R1, R2 times some TS, and P1 is equal to H1 of C1 XOR with C2, and compute this K1 public is E dot P1, and K1 private is equal to E dot ID1. Okay, T is a random number. Then find this D1 is equal to the hash of R1 XOR R2 XOR ID1 XOR P XOR K1 public XOR with timestamp. Exactly similar calculations will be done here in the node 2 also. Then node 2 will send ID2, P2, K2 public and D2. This is to server. And similarly, node 1 send the ID1, P1, K1 public, D1 to server. Now the server will have all the things. With using these, the server will say whether the nodes are correct or not. So if see the D1 equal to delta 1 and H1, this is the sorry, ID1 is equal to delta 1, what is computed, and this H4 of this R1, R2, ID1, P1, K1 public XOR with TS is equal to D1 because these all the parameters he has two in this database. Then it authenticates node 1. Fine. Similarly, from this node 2, he obtained these values. Then he compute this if ID2 is equal to delta 2, what is here, and this H4 of R3 XOR R4 XOR ID2 XOR P2 XOR K2 public XOR TS is equal to D2, what he obtained. Then it authenticates node 2. Now the server could able to authenticate both node 1 and node 2. Then what we will do is that it computes D3 is equal to H4 of R1 XOR R2 XOR ID2 XOR P2 XOR K2 public, and D4 is equal to H4 of R3 XOR R4 XOR ID1 XOR P1 XOR K1 public. And share this D3 K2 public to node 1, and similarly share the D4 and K1 public to node 2. Now each node if it is authenticated, then node 2 will have the D4 and he calculate these things, and node 2 accept this K1 public, and similarly node 1 also accepts K2 public if this is satisfied. So now node 1 could able to or could assure that node 2 is authentic, and similarly node 2 assure that node 1 is authentic by choosing this. And now each one is having the public key of others. Okay, therefore they can communicate each other securely. So this is the scheme. This scheme seems very interesting, and I believe that it is an interesting scheme. Of course, if anything, let me share this slide for a half a minute. If anyone can identify what is the problem in this protocol, because we have discussed little things. I started with the Needham-Slode protocol and show that what the problem is, and now I'm showing at the last one protocol, and I wish that someone can identify what the problem could be. Then we'll discuss it. Okay. Of course, this will be, I'm not going to again anything more. Here we stop it out. Before that, let us identify where the problem could be, how the attacker can attack this scheme. Anyone else? Anyone can identify or write in the chart that if somebody could identify what the security flaw of this scheme. These are very interesting mechanisms and published in a very reputed journal even. Any answer to this? Any of the participant can tell that, can just take an attempt to say that where the security flaws could be. You can unmute and tell me also. No answers?
Excuse me, sir. Sir, I think anonymity could be possible, sir, because the user identities are not masking here.
Where? My
No,
question is that, just let me clarify my question again to avoid the ambiguity. I want to say that what is the problem in this scheme? How the attacker can attack, means what he can do it. Let us not to look it into that. What are the properties they have not claimed, like anonymity, etc. I'm not going into that.
okay,
My
okay,
question
sir.
is that, okay, just as I showed in the very part 1 that I took it in the Nizam storage protocol and showed that what the security flaw is there. Though the cryptographic, even if I assume that the cryptographic mechanism is secure, the underlying cryptographic mechanism is secure, but still the protocol is not secure, failed to prove it to be secure. Similarly, here also I say that okay, the POP-based mechanism, POP is very secure, I could assume it out, but still what the problem could be. Yeah, just take a look. If anybody can attempt it out, it would be nice. I will keep the slide here for another one minute. Then I will tell the answer and I will stop it.
Sir, I guess replay attack can be possible, sir, here.
Now, where is it? Where the replay can be? Who can replay? Means who means one has to who will replay? Yeah, I can say that who will replay or who will masquerade and replay. That what I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
Tell me. Tell that thing.
Intruder
Where?
knowledge, sir. Through the intruder knowledge, they can, sir.
What he will replay? What? Okay, I'm writing it here. 1, 2 step, 3 step, 4 step. Similarly, here 1 prime, 2 prime,
2 prime, 3 prime.
Okay, tell me that.
During
So
this,
which step?
according to this flow.
May I know your name, please?
Sir, Murlidhar P.
Oh,
Sir.
from where are you?
From VAT Vellore, sir.
Okay, great. Yeah, please. Please attend.
Sir, as far as this server, after 1 to TS1 prime, here is it possible? Sir, to the best of my knowledge, intruder, according to the intruder knowledge, they can exist anywhere in this, but here the timestamps are
It is not the exact timestamp. I could say okay, the timestamp is a TS1 prime and XOR with this. Okay, like this way. Okay. But here this is timestamp.
TS, sir. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Because if I will not put this TS and they could not calculate the TS, then what happens? They need to synchronize. The synchronization problem will come. Therefore, they have taken the authors are very clever. They took care into.
Okay, okay, sir. We could listen it from you, sir, because it is going for kind of ambiguity. If you
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Right. Okay. Thank you for your attempting. Right. It's nice attempt, and of course you can try it out also. But let me tell the answers. What is this? So attacker changes the value of here, right? Here the problem. that the values ID2, P2, K2 public in such a way such that this D2, okay, so they will send this ID2 to ID2 star, P2 to P2 star, K2 public to K2 public star, which satisfy this relationship. Okay, because they have calculated like this, right? You can see that ID2, P2 and K2 public. So how can they find that? It's also written, in order to find such a tuple, it first chooses the random value S star FQ and random point P2 star of the elliptic curve. Next, they compute the K2 public star is equal to S star P2 star. Then it chooses ID2 star such that it satisfies this property like this way. Then what they do is that rather than this, right, he will send this ID2 star P2 K2 public star. So what the node 1 does is that it will communicate with a malicious node, say node M, which is having the public K2 public star, which is not the K2 public, which is of node 2. Okay, those server has targeted for certain things, but actually the attacker did certain things. Now node 1 is communicating with a malicious node rather than the proper node, authenticated node. That is the flaw of this scheme, which is identified also in 2018 or 19. So the gist of these things, what I mean to say is that whenever you are proposing a scheme, please look it into very carefully, such that even though the underlying cryptographic mechanism is secure, the scheme may not be secure. Okay. With this, I will stop it, and if any questions, I will happy to take it out. So here we just discussed the how the authentication is important, and I've chosen this the security or analysis of the, not the security analysis, but the how the authentication key management mechanisms are suffering from the security attacks. And then we discussed about the lightweight authentication like POP based authentication, and we see the security analysis of a scheme. Well, so if you have any questions, of course, I am happy to take it out. Yes, please.
Thank you, sir, for an informative talk on authentication mechanism and authentication using PUB. So now I request the participants, if anybody has any questions, please let us know. Sir is here, he will answer your question.
Sir, this is Muralidhar again.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for your valuable information, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, here I would like to emphasize one point regarding this lightweight authentication, sir. So most of these lightweight authentications can be best fit for IoT environments, right, sir?
See, what light, because these devices are means portable devices, it does not have much computational communication power.
Yes, sir.
So therefore, there are two ways to resolve. Either you embed the lightweight security mechanisms, or take the security mechanisms and put it there in the server side and make it lightweight.
Sir.
Either way, you can solve the problem. Yes.
Okay, sir. But my point here is, sir, since most of the IoT devices are not constructed with the standard or with the standards, proper standards, sir. So
Right.
how can we ensure that the device can work for us? And though we are applying these standard secure mechanisms, how far it can be reliable to perform or compute the task on top of the network, sir? Because as I heard, lot of according to the lot of recent related surveys and research concepts, most of the IoTs are not following or meeting the requirements of the standards. So how far it can be set? My point.
Okay, if I understand the question perfectly, but it is a very interesting question. Exactly what we are discussing, it is not in IoT systems. That I to accept it out. However, the thing is that, but the security is essential. Unfortunately, the security is always in an afterthought process, right? Therefore, many times we are using the page like things, right? Just I have showed you the same thing that the vehicle got hacked, right? Then it asked the company had told the access, right? So for these things, what the standard says is that in the standard, of course, the DTLS is there, right? Datagram Transport Layer Security Mechanism, right?
Sir.
Okay. So this is in the standard. You have the you have the TLS, right? Transport Layer Security.
Sir.
The DTLS can be used in your IoT systems. It can be used. Why it is DTLS? Because it is not the TCP protocol, but you are using the UDP-based protocols. So rather than the TLS, we are using the DTLS can be used. That is used. Like in the TLS, there are many cryptographic schemes are there which can be embedded into. Similarly, in DTLS too, right? The symmetric key, asymmetric key, etc. And new schemes can be also put it into.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks Muralidhar for your question.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and anybody else, any question? No? Okay. Okay, then thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with the participants.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev, for inviting me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, sir. Okay, participants. So with this, we end our today's 3 sessions. And tomorrow we will meet at again 10:30. And the first talk will be by Mr. Sai Satish. And he is the administrator of Andhra Hackers, which is the top hacking awareness forum in India. So please attend at 10:30. And I will share the recordings with all of you as soon as all the recordings are processed. Okay, and I think all of you have marked the attendance also. So yeah, lecture note from second session, I will get it, don't worry. So I will request sir to share the lecture notes, and in fact recording also I will share. Okay then, so thank you for attending the first day of the talk, and hopefully we will meet tomorrow with good sessions. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Sanjeev. Am I audible?
Yes, audible.
This is Dinesh. Today morning first session.
Sorry, your voice is not clear.
I'm audible?
Yeah, audible. Yes, please tell.
Today first session. I was able to attend.
Actually, I'm not getting your voice. Can you message? Yeah, you just send me a message. Okay, in the WhatsApp. Yeah, please. I will do.
Thank you, Sanjeev.
Yeah. Thank you.